Hello, everyone. I hope you're all keeping well wherever you are and enjoying the longer, brighter days that are coming to us at the moment. It's Marcus Barnett here from the union's comms department. And tonight I'm here with CW National Officer Sally Bridge, Debbie Cort from the Telecoms and Financial Services Executive, and John Fairclough, a CW representative in Bootle. And we're here to discuss the agreement that was announced this morning between our union and Santander over working arrangements. Now, obviously, this is a major agreement that's made national news, and understandably, there's going to be loads and loads of questions from members about, where everyone stands going forth. So we had in mind that this session will answer some of these questions and help everyone understand the deal with a bit more depth. So I'll let the panelists get on, laying out what the deal looks like and setting out the scene. I'll start with Sally, who can explain the ins and outs of the deal for you. So over to you, Sally.
Thanks, Marcus, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us. And Marcus is right, this is a major agreement, a major announcement in Santander that was made today that is unprecedented in the history of the bank. A transformation programme announcement that touches nearly 7,000 people in scope. There are two main key strands to the transformation. First of all, a review and a rationalisation of their head office property estate. And secondly, an introduction of new ways of working for those impacted on the sites in scope of the announcement. And the rationalisation includes the closing of Bootle, Manchester Deansgate, and the consolidation onto one building at Carlton Park by the end of 2021. The rationale that Santander have given is that they have too many head office buildings, and they have been looking at this for some time. But more importantly, they have been under-occupied even pre-COVID. They are in need of maintenance. Some of them are particularly run down and they have ongoing costs. But since the pandemic, clearly things have been speeded up as far as their decision making is concerned. And against this backdrop, we've had to negotiate. And we have secured an agreement where sites or reducing sites, that they will lease smaller properties in the localities. These will be smaller properties in order that our members can collaborate and come together to facilitate critical workers and those unable to work from home. There will be a new dual location contract for those that opt to work from home, which will involve a variation of contract to allow for those in closing and consolidating sites to work from home while being able to collaborate with colleagues in a nearby hub or consolidated site. There will be the option of applying for voluntary redundancy in closing and consolidating sites unless you are deemed as a critical worker in a consolidating site. Now, one of the things that has swayed the CW and has highly influenced the negotiations is the surveys. The bank have undertaken 3 surveys the last year, and the CW have undertaken one as recently as February. The feedback that we received as a result of that survey was the overriding view of our members that they have wanted to retain the flexibility and opportunity to work from home post-COVID. The feedback and comments that we have received have been fed back to the management. And it isn't just about the people that want to work from home. It's also about those that have had issues with working from home. And that has very much been part of the negotiations that we've had. To be clear, this agreement is about protecting jobs. It's about avoiding compulsory redundancies, and it's about providing viable options for our members. And to support that, there is a financial support package for S1, G1 and S2 and G2 grades. Those opting to take up the dual location contract will include a one-time £500 cash lump sum, and from year 2, a £500 a year allowance paid on a monthly basis. A guarantee of no change to pay and terms of employment as a result of the contract variation. Improved IT and equipment to be provided for all colleagues, and a dual location charter that supports well-being and defines clear boundaries for working at home. All of this will be undertaken by a preference exercise that will commence as soon as possible into April, and individuals will be given options. It's our intention to come out to you and explain this in far more detail. I've just given you the main headlines, but I'd like to repeat, this agreement is about avoiding compulsory redundancies. We understand that there will be some of you that will be overwhelmed, that will be upset. Some may even be angry. But we have done what we can to ensure that you have a future, you have a choice, you have a job in Santander if you want to. And if you want to leave, there is the option to do that as well. Obviously, there is a lot more to this agreement, a huge amount of detail, and I hope that we'll cover this as the call goes on. As I say, there will be further opportunities to go into more detail over the coming weeks. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sally. And now on to you, Debbie.
Hi, everyone. Well, thanks for joining us this evening on a day really where the magnitude of the change is probably huger than anything we've had since Santander was acquired Alliance and Leicester back in 2009. So this is something probably we've not had to deal with before. But I think most of us realised during the last 12 months that the world of work was never going to return to what it was before. The normal would not be the same as it was pre-COVID. I think we all realise that. And so what we've done is pretty groundbreaking, because we are probably one of the first unions to negotiate a deal with a company that involves ongoing payment towards costs. And that's really important because there are ongoing costs for people. In the survey that we conducted of our members in February, it was quite clear a large proportion of you felt that you were incurring extra costs on utility bills and that sort of thing, and that needed to be recognised, acknowledged and compensated for. And so a large part of our negotiations with the company have been to make that the best that we could do. So I know you will have been bombarded with information today from both us and the company, and some of you may need some time to sort of digest that. But this is an early opportunity for you to get a bit more clarity, and we'll follow this up with some Zoom meetings next week to answer further questions. So this is the start of our consultation with you to make sure that you are quite clear about the options that you have when you go into your one-to-ones with your managers.
Oh, thank you very much, Debbie. And last but by no means least, over to you, John.
Thanks, Marcus. Following on from the comments made by Sally and Debbie, over 50 years the Bootle site has been there. During that period of time, there has just been one continuum, that being the CWU and its predecessors. CWU has been the glue that has kept everybody together over the years, with the main priority, which is keeping jobs. We are still here for you, the members, during this worrying time, and always will be. The CWU Bootle branch will continue to support you through this process. I would make the following comments regarding the announcement this morning about the closure of the Bootle site. When I first heard about it, there were a few emotions that went through my mind. Firstly, anger, then bewilderment, then sadness, then realisation. But the harsh reality of living in the world we live in today, memories do not put food on the table or pay the utility bills. Only wages can do that. The agreement the CWU have secured maintains employment, even though mainly working from home. There are no changes to terms and conditions, plus a £500 annual allowance for working from home. The history of the Bootle site has had a few major changes over the years. The first one was privatisation, the selling of the Gyro Bank, the People's Bank, to Alliance in Leicester for a pittance. Most people should remember the remark made by a senior member of staff. The best thing I like about Bootle is seeing it in my rear view mirror. Then we were bought by Santander. The memories the Bootle site, especially the club, hold within their walls would make a fantastic novel which would be read by thousands. The stories are only too numerous to mention. But just remember, those memories can never be taken away. Now we will make new memories. We're making those new memories wherever we are. Let's make sure we do it together and support each other in our new journey. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sean, and thank you, Debbie and Sally, for your excellent contributions as well. Now, we've got plenty of comments coming through from the members, the vast majority of them very positive and, very thankful for the union, for the negotiating efforts. But, there are some questions coming through as well, and I thought it might be best attempting to address some of them. So if that's all right, Sally, I'll start with you. So if any of our members are having problems working from home, what sort of options do they have?
It's a very good question, Marcus, because it was as well something that the CWU picked up. I have to say this question came out in the comments of the survey that we undertook in February. We had problems with people didn't have the space, people had issues with their children, we had that they were incurring costs, and we had members that were saying that they had mental health issues, that they didn't feel good about working from home. And we have fed that back to the bank. And as part of the agreement, there are exceptional circumstances. At the moment, there are people that are attending work, attending Bootle, attending Carlton Park and Manchester Deansgate, because they have exceptional circumstances, because they cannot work from home. And that is part of the agreement that we have with them now. So if you feel that there are absolute reasons for you not being able to work from home, or that you just absolutely cannot, for your own well-being, tolerate working from home, you will be able to have a one-to-one with your manager, and you can make it clear that is one of your options. I said before, there's going to be alternative sites. Building 4 at Carlton Park. They are sourcing another building in Bootle, and also sourcing another building in Manchester. And we know that there'll be space for not just critical workers, but for those that have got exceptional circumstances.
And if I can just come back to you, Sally, how often will members be expected to, attend these sites, these collaboration hubs, if you like? Have you got any idea about that?
Yes, well, this was also discussed as part of the negotiations. It will be very much dependent on the work that they're doing at this moment in time, but it will be fairly regularly. It will be 5 times a month, maybe 3 times a month, but it's also very much up to the manager to actually call the meetings. It will be for one-to-ones. It will be about collaboration with colleagues, and it will be determined, as I've said, by the manager. So it won't be the same for every single team, but it certainly will be around that they will be asked to collaborate at the hub or the site, which is obviously within reasonable travelling distance.
Oh, fair enough. Thanks so much for that. I won't try and peck your head so much. So I'll move on to Debbie, if that's all right. Debbie, do you know yet if there's going to be a trial period or anything like this agreement?
Yeah, that's an interesting one, because strictly speaking, according to the terms of our redundancy and redeployment policy, the only time a trial period applies is if somebody's redeployed into a different job, and that's not the case here. But we have struck a deal for a reduced trial period of 8 weeks for 2 particular populations of people, and those are people on a closing site who are site-based because they have to be, because of the work that they do, who agree to move to the new hub. They will get an 8 weeks trial period so that they can trial out the travelling, because they'll be working from a different location. And then the second group of people are people on a closing or consolidating site who have predominantly still been working on site throughout the pandemic. If they subsequently decide to take up the dual working contract, then they will get an 8 weeks trial period so that they can try out working from home, because they won't have been doing it for the amount of time that their colleagues have in the rest of the bank. So they are the 2 groups of people, and it's an 8-week trial period, and that's been negotiated by exception just for this restructure.
Oh, brilliant. And there's lots of talk as well about the £500 allowance as well. Got a question here from a member. I'm currently working from home in a secondment role following my job at Carlton Park being displaced in a recent restructure. Will I qualify for the £500 allowance, they ask?
Yes. Now that one was something that we had to negotiate a little bit harder on, but eventually we got the company to agree that, because there are a group of people on Carlton Park and Bootle that have been seconded into roles because their jobs were displaced in a previous restructure last year, and they've been seconded to do a home working job for financial crime or financial support. And the bank has agreed that those people can have the £500 allowance, on the understanding that if they take redundancy at the end of the secondment, the £500 would be taken back from their redundancy settlement. So that was a big move from the company. Actually, that was something that wasn't on the table at the beginning, but we managed to get for people.
Oh, well, that's phenomenal, and it sounds like those sorts of efforts that you're putting have been rewarded, particularly in the comments here. The vast majority of the comments here seems to be very positive, very sad about the Bootle site and the Manchester site. Hello, by the way, Lee Shannon, fellow Red. Nice to see your name. But maybe I can bring it back to Sally to discuss about critical workers. So could you explain more about this and what sort of options critical workers have? Sorry, Sally, I think your microphone might have gone there.
Yes, it does help if you turn your mic on. Apologies. Critical workers, I just edit that bit out there. If critical workers are a small group of workers that have been identified either on the basis of an operational risk or regulatory risk. And there's 2 sets as far as those that have to be work from a site, therefore their job, their work role is dependent on being on site. And for those people, they will be found a job, a role at the site, either the collaboration hub or the building 4 in Carlton Park. There's also some other critical workers that their role isn't dependent on being on site, and they will have the option of the dual location contract if they wish. And those that are in Bootle that are identified and Manchester Deansgate as a critical worker, as their site is closing, they will also have the option of a voluntary redundancy package. If on Carlton Park, because they will not have the option of redundancy, as this is not a closing site. So they will have options, particularly in the closing sites, as I say, of either staying on site if they wish to, If their role is not dependent on being on site, they can opt for the dual location contract, and obviously they can opt for redundancy. And the only difference is with Cort and Part is that they cannot opt for redundancy.
Oh, brilliant! Thank you very much. And Debbie, this is another one for you here. So there's obviously quite a lot of discussion about things like the the charter and issues about work and private life interference and so on. So the question here: I work for CICC and I've been working from home since the beginning of the pandemic, but customer calls are routed through my own mobile phone. Will this still be the case if I sign a dual working contract?
Yeah, that's a good one. And that's something that we did highlight to the company very early on when we were talking about technical provision for people for the dual working contracts, because we don't think that is acceptable for any people to have to use their personal device for anything. Now, the company has told us that that was a workaround for the pandemic, and that they are assuring us that once this is made, a permanent dual and home working contract, that people will have all of the up-to-date technical equipment they need, and that nobody will need to use their devices for anything. They're talking about, for contact centre workers, having their calls routed through a cloud-based platform. So that's the solution that they should have in place. So I understand that question entirely, and nobody should be using their own devices going forward.
Oh, I'm sure that's a big relief for quite a lot of people who are probably worrying, and thinking about the same thing. I've got another one for you here, Debbie. Sorry to drop them on you. So this one's from an S3 manager in a site proposed to close. What assistance will I get to set up my home working arrangements, as I see that I won't be eligible for the allowance?
Yes, that's right. And it was important for us when we were discussing this allowance to make sure that it went to the people that really needed it. And we have to accept that the lower paid workers are the ones where their utility bills take up a greater proportion of their outgoing than higher paid people. So if we were going to get a reasonable allowance, it had to be directed at those lower paid people, the S1s and S2s, and the S3 and above, unfortunately, don't qualify for that allowance. Because when all said and done, they have a very generous reward package and a £6,000 status car allowance, which they are keeping, even though they're working from home. So, but what we did make sure was that you still would have all the equipment. So all of the hardware, office chair, and if you need it, a desk will be provided as well. So you'll have everything you need to be able to function from your home.
Oh, thanks for that. And that's hopefully that's satisfying lots of people who are worrying the exact same thing. Now, Sally, before I bring it on to John to discuss the Bootle site, plenty of people are also wondering about what the future of the CWU is within this context. So how do you think this agreement will affect organising for the union in the near future?
Yeah, well, it's very good question, because obviously our members will want to understand about what happens to the CWU in all of this. And I'd like to reassure them that we're still going to be there. The fact is that this isn't a job. This isn't an exercise about shedding jobs. The jobs will still be there. And we've already started the discussions with the bank around what the bargaining unit looks like, around access as far as recruitment, as far as moving into a more virtual type model, a different operating model from working from home. It will have its challenges, but I think that we need to, as a trade union, we need to change as far as our techniques, our recruitment, and our ability to attract new members into the union. And I think that's possible. And we will, as a national team, discuss that, as indeed we will continue our discussions with the bank. We need to be a modern trade union for the future, as indeed this is a modern agreement post-COVID.
Thanks for that. And obviously, you're completely right when you're talking about how we need to be organising for the future. But so much of the comments, expressing such deep sadness about, how much history, particularly the Bootle site has, and how much history for the union as a workplace it has, and what a pivotal role it played in the development of the union. People are saying in the comments here, Tony Benn would be spinning in his grave. The late great Tony Benn, and the depth of feeling here is, it's palpable. So I wondered maybe if John could say a few words about the closure of the Bootle site, and go ahead, John.
Thanks, Mark. It's very difficult to put it into words, actually, to be honest. It's a very sad day. For using myself as an example, put my whole working life working on the Bootle site. I've seen mothers, fathers, brothers, sisters, aunties, uncles, young couples getting married. The history on that site is absolutely phenomenal. You are right about Tony Benn. I remember meeting Tony Benn in the boardroom in the Gyrobank days. Harold Wilson was there. Alan Johnson's been there. I daresn't mention one other person who's been there because I think I'd get killed. But the amount of historical stuff that's been there, it was the first bank to have optical character recognition. It was the first bank on numerous things. And I'll finish on this little point. When I started there was one company called Gyrobank. And at the time, there was 5 trade unions. And over the years, what we found now is that there's actually 1 trade union, the CWU, and 5 companies. It's actually just unbelievable how things turn. But the historical significance of that Bootle site, and to this day, it's still known as the Gyro site. I think whatever happens to that site, no matter where it happens, it will still be called Gyro. If anyone's getting a taxi from Lime Street and mention the Gyro, even in 100 years' time, I think they still call it the Gyro site. So the significance is there, and it's a really, really, really sad day, not just for the people who work there for their memories, the people who are working there now, but also the local community as well, and the supply chains that used to supply to that Bootle site. It's been a really, really sad day today.
Thank you, John. No, it has, and I think you've summed up pretty perfectly the history and the depth of the place that it had for so many people over generations there, and I think you've really done that perfectly and done it justice here. So I think on that note, we should probably say that it's about time that we wrap up. That's just about all that we've got time for tonight. So on behalf of the comms department, thanks everybody for joining us. I hope that some of your questions, concerns, worries, anxieties, I hope they were answered by the discussion that we've had tonight. And, I hope you agree with us that this deal does set a benchmark, for other deals and negotiations in the industry between our union and the employers. I'd like to quickly hand you back to Debbie and Sally, who will just say a quick word in that order. But from all of us at the union, thanks so much for tuning in, and stay safe out there. Over to you, Debbie.
Thanks, Marcus. Yeah, I'd just like to thank everybody for joining. I hope that's helped a little and clarified a few things. But of course, this is just the start of our consultation with you. Look out for invites to our Zoom meetings happening as soon as next week, where you can get more answers to any questions you might have.
Thank you. And on to Sally.
Thanks, Marcus. I'd just like to say that we understand the mixed emotions that many of you may feel tonight around either your site closing or being vastly reduced in size. Yes, it is sad. I think it's also been difficult to negotiate up against something which has just got such a historical significance and is part of the union's history as well. I think this agreement that we've made gives people choices first and foremost. It preserves jobs. It actually protects your terms and conditions. And I hope that you'll understand that we've done our very best. We've honestly tried to do our best by the people and the members that we represent. As Debbie said, this is the start of our consultation. We will, over the next week or so, be able to give you a lot more detail and get into a lot more debate, and also have much more interaction with you, so that we can hear you, see you, and get your comments direct. We look forward to hearing from you and seeing you next week at the live events on Monday and Tuesday. Thank you and good evening.
Thank you. Take care, everyone.
Thanks all. Bye now.